Hello everyone. It seems a little while since we've read some of these chapters with half term. And the good news is we're looking forward to welcoming you all back on the 8th of March. So we're really pleased that in a week or so we're going to be seeing you again. In the meantime, we're going to see if we can get through this book before you come back. So we're up to chapter 29, leaflet. I wake to find the mist has lifted and stars dot the cloud-dark sky. My eyes adjust to the night quickly. I know the snipers are above us on the ridge. Their presence makes me shiver. This way, whispers Sam, pointing towards an overhang of snow. We'll be more sheltered under there. I stare at the ground. The muscles in my body are yelling at me to stop. The clouds thin and the moon casts dappled light behind them. I hold my breath. The wind whooshes and carries the clouds across the sky. Come here, Bones, I whisper. Eve. They don't move. If the snipers looked straight down, they'd see Eve's tail sticking out from the overhang. I press my cheek against her soft neck, wrap my arms around her head and coax her onwards. Bones lumbers after us. How many people have made it through this sniper valley, I wonder? I picture Sam's dad waiting for Sam to come home. Why didn't you tell your dad you were leaving, I ask. He shrugs. He wouldn't have cared. We walk all night, hiding from the moon until the sun rises, and I can see we've travelled away past the ridge with the snipers. At least I think we have. Everything looks the same in the snow. Here? Asks Sam. I nod, too exhausted to speak. We collapse on the ground. Sam passes me, jerky. I chew and swallow before curling up in a ball next to Eve. My mind spins with ideas about the secret message and I can't sleep. After a while, I open my backpack and pull out the copy of the Snow Lion. Perhaps there will be a clue in there. For every lie Dad prints in his job, he tells a truth in the leaflet. I read the column under the news section. The Chodens are the 8th family to be taken in for questioning since the beginning of August. I didn't realise it was so many people. Their crimes include conspiracy against the Chinese government by performing songs in the Tibetan language. They haven't been seen since. The importance of what Dad knows hits me. If he didn't write this, then no one would know about it. The Chinese minister has scheduled a visit to the area, which will take place shortly. I remember Dad mentioning it excitedly a while back. I flick through the Snow Lion, looking for another clue, stopping under the section, Teachings from the Dalai Lama. Mum always used to read that part to me. The main purpose of the secret resistance is to preserve our culture, she'd say. If we don't teach it, then it'll soon be forgotten. I smile at the memory, but there's nothing in the leaflet that brings me any closer to figuring out the secret message. Chapter 30. Tracks. Next day, I wake up early and spot tracks in the snow. Bending down to take a look, I trace them with my fingers. The small, probably a fox. They remind me we're not alone in this emptiness, and something pulls me in their direction. Let's go that way, I say. Sam lifts his head sleepily. Why? We should follow the fox. Okay, but we need to be careful. We know there are snipers over there, I say, pointing towards where we were, so let's keep going. I leaned us onwards, placing my footsteps on either side of the paw prints and trying to shake the doubts away. Dad will have to ask us to join the secret resistance when we get him back, I say. I don't know. We still have so much to learn. You sound like Dad, I say jokingly. He shrugs. I turn to him. You remember when we were younger and I first found out about the resistance? Sam nods. And remember how desperate I was to join? Well, back then, I only really cared because it was something I wasn't allowed to be part of. My heart races. I've never admitted that to anyone before. Maybe I didn't even realise it myself until now. Sam's staring at me, eyes narrowed. But now I really do want to help, I continue. I'm ready, Sam. Then you should just tell your dad, he replies. We keep walking, getting into our stride until we turn a corner onto a thin path, where another track crosses the foxes. I bend down and spread my fingers next to one. It's twice the size of my hand. At the top of it are lines made by claws. Sam, I whisper, a bear has been here. He stares at the ground, following the trail with his eyes. The tracks appear from the drop to our right, cross our path, and disappear up the slope to our left. The wind blows, carrying our scent straight towards the bear's path. I can't take my eyes off the ridge. We had to make noise, says Sam. It's the only thing that'll keep the bear away from us. I glance at the folds in the mountains, imagining snipers hiding behind each one. There won't be more, says Sam, sensing my concern. Not so close to the others. I search the mountains again. There's no evidence of snipers, and the bear is what's worrying me most now. I open my mouth and sing. My quivering voice echoes off the snow and the mountain walls. No words come to my mind, and I sing in vowels, sounds to the tune that Mum often hums. Let's go, says Sam, ushering me forward. Hand me the prayer bowl. I pass it to him, and he clangs the wooden end of the mallet against it. Eve shakes her head, startled by the noise. Sam sings with me, and we push onwards, letting our voices clear the way. I drag my feet round the next ridge. Sam pants beside me, singing between breaths. The bear tracks are far behind us now. My voice is raspy, but I keep singing. When we come up over the other side, I see the peak again. 2 big ones and a small one, just like the map, but going in the right direction. The sun's setting behind them. The snow glows purple, and we're bathed in pink light. It's the most beautiful sunset yet. Yes! I punch the air. Sam is beaming too. Eve moves next to me and nuzzles her nose into the palm of my hand. I rub her forehead between the eyes. The yaks lie down, and we climb onto their backs and sit, side by side, watching the light change colour as it gets dark. Chapter 31. Moon. When Sam stops and drops his backpack miles later, I don't complain. The snow is thinner, and he shovels it against a side with his foot. I lay the empty sacks on the ground and sit down on them to squeeze my shoes off. My feet are covered in blisters, and my big toenail has peeled off. Yellow pus oozes in the corners. I put my shoes back on, and we take the tarpaulin and fasten it over the rock, making shelter from the battling wind. I pull the gas stove out, light a match and turn it on. It whooshes up in a flame. I hold my hands over it. The flame withers and dies. No, I murmur, not now. Sam finds 2 stones and plays the dried dung between them. He sits in the entrance, striking match after match. Light, I say, as each flame fades. Please light. A corner of the dung bursts into a small flicker of fire. He lets the flame grow, sheltering them with his hands and blowing to make them stronger. The smoke rises up, dissolving into the sky. Sam balances the pot on top of the rocks, and we scoop snow into it. I hold my hands over the pots, loving the warmth. We pour in the sampa grains, and it thickens into a porridge. Brown sludge it is, says Sam. I let the warm food slide down the back of my throat. Watching the flames crackle, I blow on my spoonful and try not to gulp the food down in one. I've never been this hungry before. I know what it's like, remember, says Sam, gazing into the fire, to lose a parent. It takes me a second for me to process Sam's words. When I do, heat flushes my cheeks, and I can't believe what he's saying. They haven't died. That's not what I meant, he replies quickly. I understand what it's like when the world flips without warning and steals everything that was real and safe. Sam winds and unwinds Bone's hair around his finger. It's the first time I've ever heard him talk about his mum. I'm sorry, Sam, I say, stroking Eve's fur. But do you know what helps, he asks. Shake my head. It's something my mum used to say when Grandpa first moved to the city, says Sam. Don't say you miss someone, say that you remember them instead. I think of the sound of Mum humming, the way Dad's eyes lit up when he finished writing a leaflet, and the time they took me sledging through the snows. Sam's right, I'll always remember those things. I hold out some cooked samper to Eve. She sniffs it with her big nostrils and turns her head away. I push my palm back under her nose, and she shakes her head, long shaggy hair swaying back and forward. Please, I say. She ignores me. I thought they ate grains, I say, rummaging through the supplies. I try mixing a tiny bit in some water and holding it out to her cupped in my hands. Eve raises her head and sniffs the air. She licks the water off my hand with her rough tongue. I'm sure they'll eat when they're hungry, says Sam. I boil some more snow and pour it into our metal water bottles. I hug mine close, thankful for the heat. When the fire burns down to embers, Sam and I huddle next to it. The yaks lie on either side of us. Without them, I think we'd be frozen already. I rest my head on Eve and stare at the moon. It's a perfect crescent, just like the picture on the letter. Eve's hair tickles my ear. We've been walking for a week, I say to Sam. How do you know? Well, it was a quarter moon when we left Ness. It was a half moon when we left Ness. Now it's a quarter moon. It takes 7 days for the moon to change from one to the other. Sam stares up at the sky. A quarter moon is a 7-day cycle, he repeats. We scramble for the letter and crouch round it, shining the torch on the ink. Eve lifts her head as if to tell us to go back to sleep. We count 7 words and land on yaks. After that it's will, yaks, will. Sam and I stare at each other, eyes wide. Good so far, he says. The next one is fly, yaks, will, fly. My stomach drops. That doesn't make any sense, I say. Hang on, let's see. Sam keeps counting the words out. Yaks, will, fly, on the 11 November. He looks up at me. That has to be it. Yaks will fly, are you sure? Can you think of anything your dad said about yaks flying? I rack my brains, but nothing comes to mind. 11th of November. That date's in a few weeks' time, I say. Then we have until then to sort it. Okay. Chapter 32, Glaciers. I think it should have been solve it, not sort it. Next morning, I run the secret message through my mind as we walk. Time for a water break, Sam says, scooping snow into the pot. I survey the last mountain in front of us. It's just as Ness said, one more pass to cross. The snow below us gives way to a glacier winding all the way down the side of the peak. It's the steepest at the top. The ice glitters in the sunlight, slippery and smooth. A few weeks ago, nothing would have stopped me taking a sack and sliding down it. I glance at Sam. He's grinning at me, and I know he's thinking the same thing. We can't waste any time, I say. Just once isn't going to hurt, he says. Besides, we have to wait for the water to melt. Looking at the pot packed to the brim with snow and the tiny flame under it, I realise Sam's right. It'll take at least a few minutes to melt. Just the first bit, I say. We can't waste energy getting back up. Of course, says Sam, tying the yak sleeves ropes together to stop them from wandering too far. I remove one of the spare sacks and step into it. Race you to the bottom, says Sam. It felt like the old days. Ready, says Sam. Steady. I don't wait for go. I'm off, using my hands to propel me forwards. Gravity grabs me, and I slip and slide across the ice. It crackles underneath me. I tug my hat off, and the air rushes past my ears. My matted hair flies behind me. The glacier punches downwards, and my stomach jumps. Whoop, yells Sam behind me. All my worry leaves me for a second as I slide away from it all. I glide across the ice, descending over the shadows in the dips and lines. Going over a bump, I lift into the air. Woohoo, I call. My voice echoes back at me from the mountains. I crash back down, and my bones hurt, but I'm laughing. Dalai Lama, I shout. There's no one to stop me. I never want it to end, but I know it has to, and I drag my fingers across the ice to stop. Mum told me that glaciers are constantly flowing, but it's too slow to see. The ice creaks underneath me as I come to a halt. Watch out, I say! Sam crashes into me. Hey, I laugh, pushing him off and pulling my hat back on. That, he says, slapping the ice, was the best thing in ages. The slap makes a low note. He taps his other hand on the ice, and it makes a different tone. Like drums, I say. He nods and taps a rhythm. I join in, once with my left, then 2 quick beats with my right. My fingers are numb. I clench and unclench them in between beats. Sam closes his eyes, throws his head back, and sings the song of the snow lion. We are the people of the mountains. The mountain air runs through our veins. We can breathe where others can't, mountain warriors of peace. His voice cuts the freezing air. I think of Mum and Dad and pray that our song reaches them somehow. The verse ends and Sam opens his eyes. I think we can do this, he says, as long as we have each other. And the yaks, I say, looking up at Eve, waiting patiently at the top. I squint. Another figure joins her. Adrenaline shoots through my blood, and the familiar feeling of danger comes booming back in an instant. Sam, I say, tapping his arm. There's someone up there. And we'll find out who that is next time. Looking forward to seeing everybody on March the 8th. I'm looking forward to reading chapter 33 with you next time. Bye-bye.